Eric Scheidler here, Executive Director of the Pro-Life Action League. I wanted to offer a few comments on yesterday's Supreme Court ruling in June Medical Services versus Russo. This was a 5-4 decision that struck down a Louisiana law that required abortionists to have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital near to the abortion facility where they operate. And the court struck down that law. It's a tremendously disappointing ruling for the pro-life movement. In particular, we're concerned to see that Justice Roberts joined with the liberal justices of the court. But I thought I'd put things into a little bit of perspective. First of all, I think we need to recognize that this particular case was on a pretty narrow matter. An admitting privileges law, it would have resulted in the closure of abortion facilities, and that's always a good thing, not only for the unborn children that we're fighting to protect, but also for women who are so often harmed at abortion facilities. But I think there was a lot of propaganda, really, from the pro-choice movement in the lead up to this ruling being handed down, suggesting that Roe versus Wade might even be overturned by the Supreme Court this year. They really tried to raise the stakes. And I think they were doing that on purpose because they thought they were going to lose. Justice Roberts wanted to uphold a very similar, almost identical law in Texas only a few years before that the Supreme Court did strike down. And so it was assumed that the court, having changed its composition just a little bit with Kavanaugh replacing Kennedy, that this law was probably going to stand. So I think they were gearing up for a loss, and they wanted to make it seem like a smaller loss, and so they started to really play up this idea that Roe versus Wade was in the balance. And I think perhaps some of us in the pro-life movement began to follow the same line and see this case as extremely significant in the way that Planned Parenthood versus Casey was a couple decades ago, and it really doesn't rise to that level. As to Justice Roberts and his kind of puzzling ruling here, he said very explicitly in his concurring opinion that he thought that the ruling in the Texas case 4 years ago was wrong, and he spells out why he thinks so. He goes into a lot of discussion about some of the standards that the court was applying back in the Casey decision, and goes into a lot of detail there. But he makes it very clear that he thought that was a wrong decision, and I think really does leave the door open for abortion restrictions in the future. So some people have been suggesting that that Roberts is now sided with the liberals, and that's all there is to it. But I don't think it's as clear as that. His reasoning is hard to kind of quite get your head around, and I think is open to intense criticism from both pro-life advocates and legal scholars. But I don't think it's the kind of a message of despair that we want to draw from this that some people have done. And in fact, very many of commentators from the legal community and from the pro-abortion side of things are not seeing this as a new sort of reaffirmation of Roe or a firm footing for abortion in the future. So, which is all to say that we still have before us many opportunities to further limit abortion, and that's critical. I mean, it's always challenging to talk about merely restricting or regulating abortion, and the pro-life movement is sometimes criticized for seeking measures like this. But it's absolutely essential that we save every baby that we can, to drive abortion rates down, to make abortion less deeply entrenched in American life, less a part of the lives of our fellow citizens who we're trying to reach on this message. Every life that we can save, every measure that we can propose, simply keeping this issue alive in the media, in our courts, in our state houses, making this an issue that people have to talk and think about is absolutely critical. So do not take this as a moment to abandon the pro-life legal strategy that we've been pursuing for decades and that has saved millions of babies from abortion, all told. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, we must not in any way reduce our grassroots efforts. In fact, this is a call to increase our grassroots efforts. We had a big loss in court. We have to take a punch, though, and we have to get back out there. We have to get back out there on the streets. We have to get back out there to our driveways, where we talk to our neighbors, to our workplaces. When we have the opportunity to share the pro-life message, we have to do so, and we have to look for ways that each of us can make a difference. Because for the child that we can save from abortion, whether we were sidewalk counseling outside an abortion facility, or said just the right thing in a conversation with a neighbor, or we stood outside politician's office opposing their position, whatever activity we're doing that saves a life, for that baby, Roe versus Wade's been overturned. They're being allowed to live. That has to be our long view here. The fight to restore legal protection to unborn children was never going to be easy. Many thought early on that it would be. My parents are among them. They thought it would take 5 years of pro-life advocacy to overturn Roe versus Wade. Here we are, almost 50 years later, and we're still fighting. Let's keep fighting. We can't stop now. And let's redouble our efforts to save those babies we can save today and not put all of our hopes in some future court ruling. Thanks for watching this analysis. I'd be interested in your comments. Please share those in the comments section. And please join me in praying for our Supreme Court justices, especially Justice Roberts. He needs our prayers. They all need our prayers. Even the liberal ones, they need our prayers perhaps more. So let's continue to pray for our courts, pray for our legislators to do the right thing, pray for the American people to be receptive to our message, and pray for ourselves that we not feel despair and that we hear God's voice when he calls us to take action to save babies from abortion in every way that we can. Thanks again for watching. God bless.